It can be extremely frustrating after running your PCR on a gel only to find no band and ask yourself what went wrong. In this video, I'll walk you through the most common reasons PCR might fail and how to systematically troubleshoot and fix them. We'll go step by step from your reagents to your thermocycler setup. First, let's break down the essential ingredients in a PCR mix. Even if one of these isn't optimized, your amplification can fail. Starting off with DNA template. Two things could impact your reaction, its quality and quantity. Let's take a closer look at these. The quality of the DNA can be impacted by how it was extracted and how it was stored. This could lead to its degradation. To check your DNA, run a small amount on a gel. If you see smearing, then the quality is poor. Intact DNA should appear as a single band. When it comes to DNA quantity, too little template, you won't give the polymerase enough to copy, and too much can inhibit the enzyme or lead to non-specific amplification. So as a general rule, for plasmid DNA, use around 1 to 10 nanograms per reaction, and for genomic DNA, use around 50 to 500 nanograms. Next, looking at primers. Primers define your target region. Their design is key to a successful PCR. There are a few things to watch out for when designing your primers. Let's go through them one by one. Self-complementarity. If primers have sequences that are complementary to each other, they can bind to one another instead of the DNA template, forming primer dimers. This reduces amplification efficiency. Hairpin loops. If the primer has complementary sequences within itself, it can fold back and bind to itself to form a hairpin structure. This prevents the primer from binding to the target DNA and reducing PCR efficiency. Off-target binding. Primers should bind only to the intended target sequence. Non-specific binding to similar but incorrect sequences can lead to amplification of unintended regions, making your results unreliable. Large melting temperature mismatch. The forward and reverse primers should have similar melting temperatures, ideally within 2 to 3 degrees of each other. A large melting temperature difference can cause one primer to bind more efficiently than the other, leading to poor amplification. Another thing to watch out for is GC content. This is the percentage of guanine and cytosine in your primers. Aim for 40 to 60%. Why? Because GC pairs form 3 hydrogen bonds, making them stronger than AT pairs. This raises the primer's melting temperature. Too much GC can push the melting temperature too high, increasing the risk of mismatches and promoting primer dimer formation. Use tools like NCBI Primer Blast or Primer 3 to help you check your primer pair. Next, DNA polymerase. Oftentimes, DNA polymerase is left on the bench and forgotten. If not stored or handled properly, it will impact its activity. So make sure to store it at -20 degrees and keep it on ice while you're using it. Buffer and magnesium concentration. Each Taq enzyme comes with their own buffers. Make sure when setting up your reaction that you use the right one. Also, not all buffers will contain magnesium chloride. Magnesium ion is a critical cofactor for polymerase, so check if your buffer includes it. If not, make sure you add this to your reaction, starting off with 1.5 milligrams of magnesium chloride and titrate up if need be. DNTPs, these are the building blocks of DNA. If they're too old or too concentrated, PCR won't work. Prepare aliquots of your fresh stock and store them at -20 degrees to avoid repeated freeze-thaw cycles, and use 200 micromolar of each nucleotides. Moving on to the PCR program. Certain steps, if not set correctly, will cause your reaction to fail. The first step, initial denaturation, is important when dealing with complex templates. If DNA is GC-rich or structured, you want to ensure that you've set enough time for all double-stranded DNA to melt into single strands. As a general rule, for standard templates, use 95 degrees for 1 to 3 minutes, and for complex DNA templates, increase the time to 3 to 5 minutes. Next to consider is the annealing temperature. This temperature must suit your primer melting temperature. So use softwares to calculate your primer pair melting temperature and test a few degrees above and below to identify the optimal temperature for your primer pair. Furthermore, you have extension time. This time must match the polymerase's speed and your target length. If this is not long enough, then your polymerase falls short when extending your DNA, so you don't end up with a complete copy of your target region. Make sure you determine the right time correctly. If polymerase copies DNA at 1 kilobase per minute and your DNA is 3 kilobase long, then you want to give it a minimum of 3 minutes. I recommend that you always add a little bit of extra time as a buffer, around 15 to 30 seconds. Lastly, the final extension ensures complete products. Often it is either overlooked or not set for a long enough duration. You want to make sure this step is included in your program, set at 72 degrees for around 5 to 10 minutes. Lastly, I want to give you some bonus tips to help you save time. Ask a fellow lab mate if they've recently run a successful PCR, and ask if you could use their DNTP mix buffer, and check if they've used the same polymerase you're using. This helps you rule out many components in your mix, and it brings it down to your primers and template, allowing you to save time. Also, when you start troubleshooting, begin by looking at these top most common reasons: DNA template quality, if it's degraded or the quantity isn't just right; primer problems, which include poor design or not the right annealing temperature; and lastly, magnesium ion issues, if it's absent or the concentration isn't optimal. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to Biolabs for more videos on molecular biology techniques. Drop any questions you may have in the comment section below, and I'll be more than happy to help.